Hello, good evening from Tel Aviv. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Boker Tov, Zoraim Tovim. I'm Jay Shofet, coming to you from the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, HaChavra L'Haganat HaTeva. Welcome to another one, a very exciting webinar in our series of live webinars every Sunday, mostly every other Sunday from September through May. And tonight, very excited to have a very special guest with us, Professor Yossi Leshem of SPNI and of Tel Aviv University, and a true asset to the world. We'll get to that in a few minutes while everybody joins and lets us know where they're from. We already got 100 people here, Yossi. We had 350 or so signing up, so welcome everybody. Welcome from New Mexico, California, LA, Toronto, Norway. Hello, Svinug, or however you pronounce that. Maybe you can send me a voice clip with how I pronounce that name. But really, it's great to see everybody here. Hi, Natan. Natan, you probably know Natan from Norm from New Mexico, and from Rehovot, and from Boston, and Maryland, and everywhere. Great to see everybody from New York and from Ashkelon. Yeah, Yossi, I forgot to mention we have a lot of people calling in and viewing us from Israel, of course, from Jerusalem. If there's a siren and alert here or in Tel Aviv, I'll be heading to the safe room, maybe with or without reception for the computer. Yossi, though, is coming to us from his safe room, and Nama as well, up north, or well, in the northern greater Tel Aviv area. But hopefully we'll have a quiet hour here. Looking forward to getting underway, which we'll do in just 1 minute. Hi from the UK as well, and from Longboat Key. Maggie and Leon. I was just gonna say we know people there. Hi, Maggie and Leon. Uh, you'll see that's Leon, Sokol, and Maggie are here, and oh, let's see. We are up to 120 people already, and people still seem to be coming in. Hello, Bobby Winter and Lawrence from the Berkshires of Western Mass, between the Berkshires and the Hudson Valley. I don't know what's my favorite part of the world, but it's one of those two, not counting Tel Aviv. Oh, we've had a quiet day here in the center of the country, but a missile hit on Beersheba today, or shrapnel at least, and people only lately injured by sound blasts, but a lot of property damage today. It seems like it's slowing down though. We last night in Tel Aviv we had the only quiet night we've had since the war began, which was a month and a couple days ago. So um, we're hoping for a quiet hour. Anyway, let's get right to it, Yossi. We're already at over 120 people here. Naama, thank you very much for back office from your home north of Ra'anana. And Yossi Leshem is coming to us from his home in Har Gilo. Yossi is the former chairman of the board and the former CEO of SPNI. He is a professor emeritus of zoology, particularly ornithology at Tel Aviv University, where he taught for many, many years. Um, and he is really a legend in the field of ornithology and in the field of environmental protection in Israel. Yossi is known for his extensive connections in what used to be a regional peace movement of Israelis, Palestinians, Jordanians, um, and others from this region. Yossi created a program of using barn owls as pest control, which is taken on all over the world. Maybe we'll hear a little bit about that today, but many, many countries are now using this method that Yossi has popularized throughout Israel, Palestinian territories, Jordan, Cyprus, Greece, and other places. Yossi has met personally and is feted by popes and prime ministers and presidents from all over the world. His as an ornithologist, he's world renowned. And one of his biggest accomplishments is what we're going to hear about today. You see a flock of, I believe, pelicans, maybe, in and an IDF fighter jet, and how it is that in this tiny and very, very dense bird migration fly route, a little narrow strip between the desert and the Mediterranean Sea, which hosts 500 million birds every direction twice a year, what was the situation before Yossi started studying this in the with the IDF and all the planes in the air, and what happened after that. I've heard bits and pieces of this lecture, looking very much forward to it. Yossi, I'm sure I've missed a bunch of things in your bio, but let's just get to it because I know you have an information-packed webinar. So thank you very much, Yossi. Thank you all, our supporters, board members from around the world, the States, Canada, UK, and everywhere else. Really happy to see everybody here tonight. Thank you all very much, and let's hope for a quiet and I know it's going to be a fascinating hour. Yossi.
Thank you very much, Jay. It's a big pleasure to be with you today. I won't talk today on Barnhouse or on the Pope. I will just talk on other flying machines.
Okay. Wow.
So I want to tell you today a story which I was deeply involved in it with the Israeli Air Force, sharing the skies, how the Israeli Air Force succeeded to fly with 500 million birds twice a year. As you know, Israel is located in the junction of three continents. From the political point of view, unfortunately, we are in a very bad situation with a lot of wars and still in the middle of a huge war. But talking on bird migration, this is one of the hotspots in the world with huge numbers flying over. And of course, for the Israeli Air Force, this was a big threat. So I wanted to dedicate this lecture to three pilots who lost their life from hitting birds. On the right side, you see Captain Sefi Levin from Kibbutz Magan Michael, who was killed by a pelican in 1974. In the middle, you can see Captain Ronen Lev, who was a pilot of an F-16, and the navigator, Captain Yaron Vivente. Both were killed by one stork which penetrated their engine, and I'll talk about it later. So I dedicate it to the memory of these three top pilots, which unfortunately were killed by migrating birds on the top migration. I want also to dedicate this lecture of some heritage of the Israeli Air Force to Lou Leonard. Lou Leonard was a machalnik. He was a volunteer who came to Israel in the Independence War. And Lou Leonard was a Marine Force pilot who came from Hungary, escaped the Nazis, came to the United States, did the Marine Corps course, and then he made the Marine flight course and was in the battle in the Japan area. And then he came as a volunteer and was one of the first pilots of the Israeli Air Force. And in 1948, he was leading 4 Messerschmitt aircraft who stopped the invasion of the Egyptian army near Ashkelon, south of Israel, and otherwise they would approach Tel Aviv. So he played a key role by leading the 4 Messerschmitt aircraft in the Independence War. And one in our lecture days, in Hanukkah every year, the SPNI has a lecture day for all the birders, and 1,200 birders are coming to listen to what is new. And at that lecture day, the commander of the Israeli Air Force, General Amikam Norkin on the left side, and the Chief of Staff, Benny Gantz, we hosted Lou Leonard, and we gave him a present of a 101 Air Squadron, which he started in 1948 with the 4 first pilots of Squadron 101. And he gave a lecture about his heritage with the Israeli Air Force. And when I asked Lou Leonard, maybe I should prepare you some slides, he told me, Yossi, I don't need slides. And he told me in Yiddish, I speak with Neshume, I don't need slides. And the man who made the contact with Lou Leonard was a 4-star Jewish general, General Bob Magnus, who married Meredith in Jerusalem. And here you can see the marriage of Bob and Meredith in Jerusalem, where 4 Marine soldiers are escorting them from the wedding. And on the back, you can see Lou Leonard standing there. And Squadron 101 is now in the Northern Air Base, Ramat David. And about half a year ago, we went to visit the commander of the squadron. And on the right side, you see Mr. Nissim Elbaz and his wife, Rebecca Elbaz. Rebecca was a cousin of Lou Leonard. They made Aliyah, they made immigration to Israel, and they are my neighbors in Har Gilo. I'm very proud I have them with us. And Rebecca, as I said, her former name was Linovich, the same former name of Lou Leonard. And she and Rebecca is holding the flight jacket of Lou Leonard, which is hanging in the room of the squadron leader. On the left side, you see General from the Israeli Air Force, Israel Barav, who succeeded to knock down 12 MiG-21. The only one who succeeded to knock him down was a buzzard which penetrated his engine, and he had to eject from the engine. So he was also the commander of 101, and we went together to visit the commander leader in Ramat David. So, and last and not least, when one of our commanders of the Air Force, General Dan Tolkovsky, who passed away last year at the age of 105 years, when he became 90, I hosted at the Hula Valley with all the cranes as a contribution to Dan Tolkovsky with all the commanders of the Air Force. And you can see on the left side Lou Leonard and his wife Rachel, and you can see there also other welcome when Dan Tolkovsky is releasing a common buzzard in the Hula Valley. You can see also below the bird General Amos Lapidot, and on the right side General Yariv Evry. Both have been commanders of the Air Force. So today I wanted to talk.
Yossi, excuse me.
Yes,
Let me just interrupt for 1 second. I'm sorry,
yes.
but all this talk of the Air Force, I forgot to welcome to the webinar. I'm sure we have with us some of your former colleagues and friends from the Israel Air Force Association, who you so generously invited tonight. So welcome, all of you gentlemen and ladies, and also maybe colleagues from Tel Aviv University, people who are not usually here. Thank you very much for joining as well. Yossi, there's over 160 people on, so go for it.
I can see. And what I want to tell you, on the 20th of May, hopefully the war in the Middle East will be over. We have a lecture day together with the Association of the Air Force. It's called The Way of the Vulture in the Sky. And we are telling them stories about the heritage of the Air Force and the last bird studies that we have here. So as you can see here in the map, Israel is located in a junction of 3 continents, and 500 million heads are flying from Europe and Western Asia to Africa and back. For example, the entire world population of the lesser spotted eagle, 120,000 eagles, are flying over Israel in 2 weeks' time. So Israel is a paradise for people who are bird lovers. We have on the migration and around here 12 species of eagles in Israel. For example, in the United States, in Canada, you have only 2 species of eagle, the golden eagle and the bald eagle. So if you like eagles, Israel is a much better place to come. So you can see here the lesser spotted eagle are soaring over the thermals. All the Palearctic pelicans from Europe are flying over Israel. And some days you can see in the fish ponds thousands of pelicans concentrating and looking for fish. 600,000 white storks are flying over Israel twice a year. And some days you can see over 1 kibbutz field, like this picture in Kibbutz Kfar Opin on the border with Jordan, where 40,000 white storks landed in 1 evening. So the problem is, of course, when you have so many migrating birds and such a big air force, the conflict between flying low and fast and migrating birds is, of course, a big problem. We have also huge migration, not only in the daytime with the huge birds like the pelicans, the storks and the raptors and the cranes, which are causing the main problem for the Air Force. But at night, most of the passerines and the waders are flying at night. And just to give you the story that I want to tell you, before we started a joint study between the Israeli Air Force and the SPNI and Tel Aviv University, the Israeli Air Force lost 11 aircraft, combat aircraft, which crashed because of hitting birds, 75 collisions between $1 and $10 million. And as I said already, 3 pilots were killed. So this was, of course, a huge problem for the Israeli Air Force. And just to tell you, you know, as bigger the bird is, as faster the aircraft fly, the impact is very high. Just to show you, I will show you two clips, a tennis game where they were hitting with the tennis ball a swallow. You see the now you will see it soon in a slow motion. You see how confused he is. Look at the ball right, flying to the right.
Wow.
And another sample of a baseball game in Los Angeles where a dove was flying just over. And look at this.
Tanta fuerza que las plumas volaron, como vieron, y cayó a una distancia de 10 pies detrás del receptor Rod Barra.
So you can understand then when the aircraft is flying 500 knots and the bird weighs about 1 kilo, the impact is 15 tons. If a stock of 3 kilo hits the aircraft, it's 40 tons. And if it's a pelican of 10 kilos, the hit is an impact of 100 tons. So here you see our chief of staff, Bogi Alon, in 2003, he flew with an helicopter to a mission, and the crane hit his aircraft, and he was almost killed. Or another pilot who was hit by an eagle who penetrated the engine near the Dead Sea, and in 4 seconds he had to eject, and fortunately enough he was saved and became later a general in the Israeli Air Force. But on the other hand, unfortunately, in 1995, on the 10th of August, an F-15 flew over the Negev desert, and one stroke penetrated the left engine, and unfortunately, that's the aircraft. After 4.5 seconds, both the pilot, Ronen Lev, and the navigator, Yaron Vivente, were killed from the one stroke which penetrated the engine. And here are again the 3 pilots which I showed you in the beginning, which this lecture is in the memory of them. Ronen Lev was the pilot who was the best of his course, and when he was killed, and I mean with connection with the families, the mother of Ronen Lev gave me a drawing which Ronen did when he was 5 years old. You can see a flag of Israel on Independence Day and an aircraft which a black bird is hitting the wing, exactly what happened to him 19 years later. Very moving story. So what is the vision of what we are doing? I always like to show a picture of President Bush in a maneuver in Iraq, standing like a bird lover with a binocular, but he forgot to remove the cover of the binocular. When I saw this, I said, maybe it's not really polite to show such a picture, but later on, it happened also to our Minister of Defense, Minister Peretz, in a maneuver of the IDF. So when we started to look at the data, we found out that most of the collisions happened in the autumn migration in August, September, October, and in spring migration in March, April, and June. So the idea of my study with the Israeli Air Force was very simple. The idea was to try and map when the big birds, the raptors, the hawks, the storks, the pelicans, and the cranes are flying over Israel, what height are they flying, what route, and start to change flying routes and change the flying maneuvers of the Israeli Air Force. So across the country, you can see from Haifa in the north till the Rift Valley, we put volunteers from all over the world who were counting the raptor migration and the stork migration and the pelican migration. Then we started for the first time ever in the Middle East to use radar. We started in Ben Gurion radar. You can see the narrow line is the coast of the Mediterranean, and you can see a huge line of white storks flying along the mountains, Judean and Samaria, 150 kilometers of white storks. And I was flying with a motorized glider every day from the Egyptian border in the spring till the Lebanese border with the same flock of storks, raptors, or pelicans, and every day about 5 to 9 hours to measure the heights of the termites which they were soaring. And we were flying wingtip to wingtip with this bird, which was, of course, an amazing and fantastic experience. I flew like this 252 days with the migrating soaring birds. Together with the pilot, I was taking the notes. Here you can see flying with a flock of pelicans across Israel or with white storks. And we used for first time ever with the unmanned aircraft, with the drones in 1986, 87, and 88. This was the first time ever in the world the drones were used for a positive purpose, not what happened now that they are coming by the Hezbollah and by the Iranian over Israel and for war purposes. So this is a very expensive system, but because I did it for the Air Force, I could use it for our study. And later on, the Israeli Air Force made new regulation, which were called bird plow zone. They stopped to fly where the birds are, the height where they are, and the time they were coming. And the big story was that since 1984, the number of collisions dropped down dramatically by 76%, saving the Israeli Air Force till today $1.5 billion with this changing of the routes of the Israeli Air Force. Later on, in 1991, when there was the heavy migration of Russians who came to Israel, the new immigrants, 1.1 million Russians, we met a new Russian general, General Dr. Leonid Dinevich, who was the head of a system in former USSR of 57 weather radars, MRL-5. So Dr. Dinevich succeeded to bring one of these radar when we located it in the Latrun Armor Memorial Site. And this radar has the same wavelengths of 3 and 10 centimeters, which is perfect also for detecting birds. So what we did, we used the weather radar, we converted it to a bird radar, we developed with some Russian immigrants a new system, a digital system, which could show the Israeli Air Force online the movement of the migrating birds along the, as you can see, along the slopes of the Judean mountains. We could measure also the nocturnal migration, where every dot is a bird which showed with an arrow the direction and the velocity of the bird. Everything was developed by the Russian immigrants. Here you can see in one radar picture, as you see on the left side below, 11,725 birds at night movement over Israel. All this with the heights were directly moved to the Israeli Air Force, also in 3 dimensions, and the Israeli Air Force decided to buy 2 more radars, one in the north, Latrun is in the middle of the country, and one in the south near Mitzpe Ramon. So everything was in a picture online. And here, for example, you can see a flock of pelicans penetrating Israel from Lebanon into the Hula Valley, and everything is now online. This was such a story of success that we tried to get, and this started in 1998, to get also the Jordanian and the Turkish Air Force. At that time, we have good relations also with Turkey. So we invited the commander of the Jordanian Air Force and the Turkish Air Force and the American Air Force, and we made a seminar together to show them our achievement and try and enlarge this activity all over. So here you can see generals from Turkey, Jordan, USA, Israel, saluting in Latrun to the memorial site. At that time, President Peres came also to this meeting because it became a new story of regional cooperation, and he is holding a big painting of a bearded vulture, because Peres in Hebrew means bearded vulture. And you see here a colonel from the Jordanian Air Force, the flight safety colonel, giving a lecture of the achievement of the Jordanian Air Force. You see here the Turkish general with Dan Khalutz, who was our chief of staff and the commander of our Air Force. And we tried first to locate also weather radars in Turkey, Jordan, and Egypt. But because of the second intifada, we couldn't do it. And then later, as you can see here, the problem is not only in military flight, but also in civilian flight. Here you can see that in December 1995, an AWACS crashed in Greece and 20 people were killed. And a Hercules in Eindhoven, Netherlands, crashed in 1996, and 35 people of the Netherlands orchestra, all of them were killed by hitting birds. Also in Ethiopia, a Boeing hit birds, and 35 people were killed and 70 wounded. So this is a real problem which you cannot really solve it everywhere. And the biggest story, of course, happened on the Hudson famous landing by Captain Sally Sullenberger on 2009, when a flock of Canadian geese hit the two engines. He couldn't do anything and only to land on the Hudson River, because he was also a pilot glider. He did it perfectly, and he succeeded to save all the passengers and the crew, 155 people. And Captain Chelsea Sally Sullenberger became a real legend, not only in the United States, but all over the world. And when Obama was the president of the States, when there was the final game of baseball, Sally Sullenberger was sitting near the president of the United States, which is, of course, a great honor in the States. So this, of course, was a great story of saving so many people. Later on, we started to develop our contact with the Israeli Air Force, with the European Space Agency, with ESA, and we tried to develop a system in Europe. You can see here in the center in Netherlands, they developed a system to follow the nocturnal migration. And they have in Europe 130 radars, weather radars. And the idea is to develop also a network of weather radars in Europe and the United States to work on a much bigger scale. Everything started in Israel. I was fortunate enough to write a book, Flying with the Birds, about the study with the Israeli Air Force and Tel Aviv University in the SPNI. This book was written in Hebrew and later on translated to English. And we made when our president Weizmann in 1999, when the book was published, we make a ceremony in the President's house to inaugurate the new book. And here you can see Eitan Ben Eliyahu, the commander of the Air Force, shaking a hand with the Palestinian. This was before the Second Intifada, when days were much more promising for peace in the Middle East. Unfortunately, now this is not happening, of course. Unfortunately, the peace is really stuck deeply here in our region. And when this ceremony happened, you won't believe it, but a day before, the American huge company, Lockheed Martin, signed a contract with the Israeli Air Force on the 16I aircraft, a huge contract of $2.5 billion, and all the board of Lockheed Martin came to Israel to sign the contract with the government. And fortunate enough, it was a day before the ceremony with our new book, so the entire board came to General Weizmann, to our president. And on the right side, you can see Shiki Shani. General Shiki Shani was the vice president of Lockheed Martin, who made all the contacts to us. And they even donated us $350,000, Lockheed Martin, for our education activity at that time in Latrun. On the right side, you see General Musa Peled, who was the chairman of Latrun Armor Memorial Site. On the left side, you see Norman Augustine, who was the president of Lockheed Martin. And behind me, you see Shiki Shani, who came to the ceremony in Latrun. Shiki Shani, just to his high appreciation, who is the third person from the right side. He was the vice president of Lockheed Martin till last year, and he was the commander of the Hercules squadron, who was the leading Hercules to Entebbe operation in 1976. Now we celebrated 50 years of releasing all the hostages from Entebbe, and Shiki Shani was the pilot who was leading with the Hercules. So he is also a good friend. And what I was really proud, that after a year, when President Weizmann finished his cadention, he flew to Jordan to a farewell ceremony with His Majesty King Abdallah, shaked his hand, and the official present from Israel to the King of Jordan was the book Flying with the Bird, with the dedication by President Weizmann, like the birds. Our slogan was, "Birds know no boundaries." He said, we hope that the people will follow this slogan. People also know no boundaries. Unfortunately, now we are still back behind. Later on, we succeeded to find in Florida Dr. Nick Carter, who was training border collies to chase birds from airstrips. So we brought Nick Carter to Israel. He showed the system to the Israeli Air Force, and we have now in every airbase, we have a border collie with an ecologist who are using the border collies are trained to chase the bird. They are very smart and they are obeying the orders and they are doing the job. And here you can see at that time, at 2000, the deputy commander of the Israeli Air Force, who became later the commander, General Eliezer Shkedi, is for the first time ever in the Israeli Air Force providing an official bone to a border collie with Nick Carter and General Schirmeister, who was the commander of the radar units. So again, something different of using birds, people, and flying machine to avoid collision between aircraft and birds. I wanted also to tell you the project was not only a success of using radars and people and drones, we also made a big campaign in the Air Force to change the flight regulation on a different level. So we made also a big education campaign in the Air Force with, for example, with car stickers, with a lot of posters, with film in all the squadrons have to watch about the story. And we even made an exhibit in our parliament, in the Knesset. On the right side, you can see Dan Chalutz, who was at that time the deputy commander of the Air Force. And on the left side, you can see Professor Shevach Weiss, who was the speaker of the Knesset, the late Yossi Sarid on the left of him, and Professor Nomi, who was the head of the unit. We made, for example, also wine, 50 bottles of wine with Carmen Mizrahi. Every bottle, $1 went to our projects, and the wine was called the Lesser Kestrel wine. And on the left side, you see a pair of lesser kestrel, which are endangered in Israel. So you see on the lower part, the male is very full of colors, bluish head, brownish back. The female is camouflaged. And if the male wants to mate with his female, you see on the leg of the female above, he has to bring her a present, a grasshopper, and then she will let him mate. So the Israeli Air Force, because the F-15 are called Baz. Baz means in Israel, falcon. So they bought also a few hundred bottles, and I was very proud that when the Turkish commander of the Air Force came for the first time ever to visit Dan Chalutz, our commander of the Air Force, he got an official present, the bottle of wine, a Cabernet Sauvignon of the Falcon wine. Unfortunately, Dan Chalutz, our commander, forgot that the Turkish commander of the Air Force was a bit confused, that you can see here, because he is a Muslim and he doesn't drink wine. But on the left side, you can see his wife. She looks quite happy. So we got also the IOU, the International Ornithological Union, to be connected with our activity. On the left side, you see Professor Klaus Topfer, who was the Minister of Environment in Germany, and he covered the big project with Professor Peter Berthold from Max Planck Institute in Radolfzell to follow with 120 GPS transmitter, which we put on the back of the storks, and to see where all the Germans are moving. Later on, Professor Klaus Topfer was replaced by Angela Merkel. She was also the Minister of Environment. This was 1998. As you can see, at that time, I still had dark hair, not like today. And we developed a big website, birds.org.il, which still works today with online cameras and other material. So the students in Israeli schools, in Palestinian school and Jordanian school could follow our migrating German storks under the title Migrating Birds Know No Boundaries. The USAID in the States donated $1.5 million to do it on a regional level. We gave all these storks Jewish name, Christian name, and Muslim names. And I will show you one of these storks. Her name was Princessa. We followed her from Germany to up to Cape Town. She was flying year after year from Germany to Cape Town. Opa, 1 second, sorry. And I hope we 1 second. In a second, we can see how Princessa leaves her nest in Germany. She moves through the Bosphorus to Iskandron Bay in Turkey and then to Israel. and to Sudan along the Nile. And then we followed her for 14 years. She made every year the same route, the same time. She stayed 2 months in Sudan along the Nile. And then at the end of November, she was moving to Cape Town and staying there in Cape Town the entire winter, all the winter. And then in the spring, she was flying back to the same husband in Germany. So the students from the schools could follow the birds online. And this was, of course, another project that we made on a regional cooperation. You see, she's flying back to her husband. In this case, the husband was flying to Spain. He was coming first to the nest to protect the territory, waiting to his wife to come back to the nest. And here you can see a summary of 20 years, putting about 120 radio transmitters. If dot is a bird with a GPS, the birds of West Germany are flying through the Gibraltar to West Africa, and most of them are flying over the Middle East, because over the Mediterranean, there are no thermals, no hot air, because there is turbulence of the water. So you can see they fly along the Great Rift Valley till South Africa, till Cape Town, or until Zimbabwe. And then in the spring migration, they're flying almost the same route back home to the same nest. Also, Lufthansa, you know, the emblem of Lufthansa, the German company, is a crane. So we succeeded to bring the president of Lufthansa, Mr. Berger, Weber, from, you can see him on the right side. We brought him and showed him our joint venture with the Palestinian. We brought him to the radar in Latrun to see what we are doing with studying bird. And Lufthansa sponsored the build project with cranes. Later on, Ron Efrat, students from Ben Gurion University, put also GPS on pelicans. But nowadays, you can see here the text and the transmitter, the GPS on his back. But now we have the situation that we can follow the birds not every 90 minutes when Argos, like Maitam, follow the storks, but you can see that every second you have a location of the bird. And here you can see 3 pelicans, a blue one, a yellow one, and the red one, flying in a flock of 2,000 pelicans, gliding in a thermal, looking for another thermal east to the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. And everything is online. Students can follow the migrating pelicans. As you can see, they are gliding now low and low till they find another thermal. And then again, they raise height like all the soaring birds, the raptors, the storks, and the pelicans. As I told you, these are the birds who cause the biggest problem. But since we made our joint study with the Air Force, we have now, since 1997, they never lost another aircraft for now 26 years, fortunately enough. Later on in Ben Gurion Airport, you know, our international airport, which is now quite not active because of the war, there was a big garbage dump with 120,000 gulls staying the entire winter, causing a lot of collisions. So we succeeded to move this garbage dump to Dudaim. This is a garbage dump near Hatzerim Air Force Base, another big Air Force base near Beersheba. Unfortunately, immediately, because the garbage dump was huge, instead of 2,000 black kites who were wintering in the Negev, we have now 50,000 black kites wintering there, causing big problem for the training and from the aircrafts who are in the Air Force Base. And Dr. Daniel Berkovich did his PhD on the black kites. Here you can see one of the black kites which hit an aircraft and was just cut to 2 pieces. So we caught with a net, with a system of nets, shooting them over the nest site, catching the black kites, and then following the bear along the way. And we found out that with the study of Daniel Berkovich, that 160 black kites all are coming from Western Russia and staying in the winter in that area instead of continuing to Africa, because they got a free lunch in the garbage dump near Be'er Sheva. And as you can see here, when after the first rain in the Air Force base in Hatzerim, we have termites in the ground. After the first rain, all the termites are coming out of the ground, and the kites immediately can see it, and thousands of kites are coming to eat the termites in the airbase, and they stop the taking off and landing and causing, of course, flight safety problems. As you know, the emblem of the American are the bald eagle. The bald eagle are everywhere, including on the first flight of Apollo 11 on the moon. We have the F-35 now in the war taking an active part in Iran, and the emblem of this one of the squadron of F-35 is called the Golden Vulture. This is the emblem on the left side, but in the drawing they painted a golden eagle, not a vulture. I tried to convince them to change the name from golden vultures to golden eagle, but in this case I failed because this was the heritage of this squadron for many years. And we have 14 aircrafts in the Air Force who are named after raptors and after birds, like the F-16, who is called Nets in Hebrew, or Sparrowhawk. Last but not least, I wanted to show you projects that we are doing with the IDF, with the Israeli Defense Forces. It's called the Nature Defense Forces. We succeeded to get from a donor, Mr. Moshe Anai, a big amount of money that every unit in the IDF who is doing something for nature conservation will get funds to do it together with the soldiers as an educational and doing something for the environment. For example, in Tselim, training zone of the armor, there are irises. The iris is the emblem of the SPNI, as you can see on the right side. So the irises were moved from the main training zones to the side of the air base, of the army base of the armor, and they were saved. And I just want to show you what we are doing with the IDF. In one of the training zoos, we brought all the generals with the chief of staff a few years ago when Gadi Eisenkot, the General Gadi Eisenkot was the chief of staff, to the training zone. On the right side, you see with the blue shirt, General Baruch Spiegel, who made the peace treaty with Jordan, with General Mansour Abu Rashid, who is our partner with the Barnhouse. And all of them came to this base to see what we did with the air, with the army base. This is not the topic today, so I will talk about it maybe sometime else. But at the end of the visit, every general got to release back to the wild a raptor. So here you can see the chief of staff, Eisenkot, is releasing a short-toed eagle. The wingspan of the short-toed eagle is 1.90 meters. So he got the honor to release the bigger one. But all the other generals released kestrels, which are only 90 centimeters. And you can see the first one on the left side, who is holding the kestrel, is now General Zamir, who is now the chief of staff of the Israeli army. And here you can see how all of them are releasing the kestrels. In the middle, the gentleman with the blue shirt is a Major General retired, who he was the chairman of the Hupo Foundation of the SPNI, Doron Almog. He is a very famous general in Israel, and he is now the chairman of the Jewish Agency, and we are really all admire his ability to get everyone connected to the Holy Land, to Israel. I was honored to give a lecture on the 70th year of Israel. General Norkin invited me to give a lecture about the joint research with the Israeli Air Force to a conference where they will be coming about 30 commanders of air forces all over the world, including Germany and the USA and other countries. So I had the big privilege to give a lecture to all these generals from all the Air Force armies about our joint venture. And then at the end of the lecture day, all were invited on the roof of the headquarters of the IDF to meet the chief of staff, Eisenkot. And I got the highest compliment when the chief of staff asked them what was the most interesting lecture on the lecture day. Many of them told the chief of staff the lecture of Yossi Leshem on the cooperation with the Air Force. So before I finish, when, every year we have a memorial day for Ilan Ramon on the right side, who unfortunately was killed in the Columbia disaster in February 2003. And astronauts from NASA are coming year after year to this memorial day to Ilan Ramon. And in 1 year we had an astronaut, Ricky Arnold, and I was very proud to learn that he asked our Minister of Science that he is very keen to meet me. And the Minister of Science couldn't tell why. I thought maybe because of the Air Force. And when I met Ricky Arnold, I found out that Ricky Arnold, who was about 200 hours in this International Space Station, he's a very keen birder. So you see him here in the space station for almost 200 days, which was a world record. And at the second year, I told him, maybe you should come and tell your experience with NASA as a birder, also to our lecture date we have every year with our Air Force. And he told me, Yossi, next year I'm in the space, but then I will come. And again, he came. We have about 600 people on this lecture day with the Air Force. But on the day of the lecture day, when he couldn't come, he sent me from the space the picture of Israel, and he wrote me that he took to the space a small flag of Israel, so the next year he can come and give the lecture. And indeed, the other year he came to Israel in 2018. We took him to the Hula Valley to enjoy the bears. He was very proud of that. And the first visit to the Hula Valley he did on Shabbat. And because I'm religious Jew, I told Ricky Arnold, I cannot come with you on Shabbat because I'm not driving on Shabbat. So he told me, he wasn't aware that what's my problem. He told me, Yossi, don't worry, I can drive. And later on, I met also another astronaut that her husband was an Israeli who fought in the independence. I started with the Independence War in 1948. Her father fought here in the Independence War, Jessica Meyer. She was also together with Christian Koch in the space station, and she was a PhD also in biology. She started penguin diving and a lot of fantastic studies. And people are saying that maybe she will be the first woman who will land on the moon. Hopefully, if she does, it's a big privilege that I could meet her and got highly impressed from this fantastic lady. Also, the commander of the German Air Force in the war came immediately to meet our commander, Tomer Bar, who is now leading all the battle. And he came another day, especially by flight, to donate blood after the big slaughter of the Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and flew back to Germany. I finished with this. I was fortunate enough to, after all the studies which I do in the Air Force, I was removed. I was once in the artillery. I'm a lieutenant colonel retired. I'm now 79 in next week, but I'm still doing the job with the Israeli Air Force, and I got an award from the commander of the Air Force for all my stuff together with the Israeli Air Force, which I'm really very proud of. The main issue is if you join forces together, you win the battle, and then you can even fish on the highway. But you have to know exactly to focus on your target. This picture I always like to show, I took in South Africa. Our public bar is presently not open because it is closed. Manager, he knows exactly what is his target. And to finish with another nice stuff I got from the American Air Force, look at this. This is a place, a blocked place, and look at how everyone closed this. The Army, in the American Army, the Navy, the Marines, and the Air Force are the smartest. So the message to take home, think outside the box and then you win the battle. That's what we try to do together with our Air Force. Secondly, if you want to run fast, run alone. If you want to run far, run together. And that's what we are doing. We are running together with Air Force, with the Palestinian and Jordan, with the Barn Owl, which I already talked about, and with many other projects. So really, thank you for listening to my presentation. And we still have about 10 minutes to ask questions. It was a big pleasure to be with you this evening or lunchtime. And the most important thing was I have 4 decades of a lot of fun doing my PhD and working with the Israeli Air Force. Thank you very much for listening.
Wow, Yossi, toda rabah. Really impressive. I mean, I learn so much every time, and somebody just wrote your connections are incredible. And one of my takeaways is that basically to be a senior officer in the IDF, not just the Air Force, you basically have to have released a large bird. You have to be familiar with them. You have to have been in the bird conference. I mean, really, it seems like you've every former chief of staff and head of the Air Force has been involved in your projects. So it's very, very impressive. And I also want to know, guys, I should mention we have one comment here from our friend Murray. But if you have any questions and answers, please write them in the Q&A feature here, and Yossi will get to them. Meanwhile, I just have one question, Yossi, that arose when I looked at those birds that fly from the tree in Germany to Cape Town. When you go to South Africa to lecture, do you send Rivka to Spain on vacation? And they can come back and meet? And is that how it works or no?
No, this is a very interesting question. People are asking me many times, why is the male going to Spain and the
It,
female goes to Africa?
why? Why?
That what the answer is probably, even we cannot prove it per 100%. This was probably, in West Germany, they have only about 5,000 nesting storks because they have modern agriculture with pesticides. On East Germany parts, there are the big population of storks. So probably they are lacking of males and females. So probably the one that we were following for 14 years, Princessa and her husband, which was called Jonas, the Jonas was from Western Germany and Princessa was from Eastern Germany. So Jonas is going like his parents in the history through the Gibraltar to avoid crossing the Mediterranean. But his wife goes like her partners as a history, coming back through the old ways through the Middle East. The other
Huh.
point, the other point which I didn't told you, which was also fantastic. After 10 years, when Princessa flew back to her husband, who was already waiting in the nest, in Sudan, there were huge storms and rains, and she couldn't go back home because of the rain and the storms, because she needed to use the thermals. So she was stuck in Sudan for 2 weeks, and everything is with the GPS online. And then after 2 weeks, she came back home to her husband. Disaster. The husband didn't took chance. She didn't come in time home. He took a new young lady, and she
Oh my
tried
gosh.
for 10 days. She tried to chase the young lady because the 10 years everything was good in the family, but she already laid the eggs, and she didn't give her a chance to come back to her original husband. And then 8 kilometers from there, she found a new husband, and her last
Oh,
4 years she did with the second husband. Okay,
wow.
so
That's
we can always learn from the bird. Come back home in time.
Yeah, that's a good one. Absolutely. I wondered if that male had a chickadee waiting for him in Spain or something,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
yeah. Um, Murray Title raises an issue about commercial flights in Israel, which have been pretty much grounded except for El Al recently. And you don't really talk about that at all. But was all this cooperation with the airport obviously done in close cooperation with civil aviation in Israel?
Yeah, civil aviation is a different story. With civil aviation, the main problem is when they are taking off and landing in the airport,
Right.
because then they go to 35,000 feet, and there the birds are, of course, very, very scarce. Sometimes there are even their birds, but the chances to meet a bird there is almost zero. So the main treatment is in the airport. And all the airport in the world, the same story like was in with Sullenberger, they have unit of chasing bird from the airport to give them a good chance not to hit a bird. The main problem is, of course, with the air forces when they fly very fast and very low to navigation and to missions and to training zoos. And you have to understand, I didn't talk about it too, but in the war which started here in the last 2 years, the Israeli Air Force, with so many flights now with to Lebanon and to Iran and to other places, the problem was that the drones which are coming, for example, in the autumn from Lebanon, they come in the same velocity and the same height and the same direction. So you have to have the ability to distinguish between drones and birds. Otherwise, they were shooting also birds because they couldn't use the radar to distinguish. So we are also working on this topic with the Israeli Air Force.
Wow, that's very interesting. I mean, yeah, they can you can chase birds away from on the ground, but Sully hit the bird about what, 20 seconds after takeoff. And also planes, on their approach and as they take off, they fly low. Sometimes they circle around Modi'in before they have to land.
With our radars, we can see bird from 100 kilometers. I mean the big bird like storks and raptors and pelicans, and small birds we can see from 20 kilometers or 15 kilometers. If they would have Sullenberger 2 off from JFK, if they would have in JFK these radars, he was hit by Canadian geese. These are in a whole flock. So these geese are about 8 kilos, 7 kilos. If they had a radar, they could see them and
Right,
give him a warning. But they did. It was
right.
flying blind, and of course, this was a big. They had a huge luck that they succeeded. An amazing stop to land on the Hudson. In fact, I got in good contacts with Sullenberger, and I was corresponding with him. We also wrote 2 papers together. I invited him to Israel. I wanted him to give a lecture to all the pilots of the Israeli Air Force and to El Al, the Israeli civilian uh, pilots. Unfortunately, he was such a busy guy and he was so much demanded all over North America. He told me, finally, Yossi, I didn't lose anything in the Middle East. No chance to come there.
It's understandable, understandable.
Yeah, of
Well,
course.
that really is an incredible part of the story. Listen, I also just wanted to ask, you gave statistics early in the lecture about, I think, 11 crashes and 3 fatalities. That was before you began your research,
Yeah,
right? That was like, and then the Isum, the application of your research began in the late 80s. That's
yeah.
when
That
the
that study was finished in 1899, 1990. This was my PhD, in fact. But
okay.
then it took time to convince the Air Force to, this became an order. It's not up to the decision the pilot to fly here or not. It's like an order how to fly and where to fly. So the last collision where we lost an entire aircraft happened in the 6th of September 1997. So now for 29 years, fortunately enough for 3 decades, we didn't lose one aircraft. But 2 years
Wow.
ago, 2 years ago, for example, a young pilot who just finished there are still collisions because this is not mathematics. Then the birds are flying sometimes higher or sometimes out of the routes. So a young pilot hit with an aircraft 10 storks, and he broke his windshield, a huge noise. He was flying about 400 knots, and he was good enough to not to lose balance. He immediately reduced the velocity. He flew up and succeeded to land without almost hearing at the Ramon Air Force Base and saved his life and the aircraft. And it was an amazing. I made the whole film only on him. And on our lecture day in May, we make the whole story for all our guests on the 20th of May, 1997, 2026.
Interesting. I remember that that was a news story in Israel as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
The
yeah. Okay.
the heroics of that pilot. Okay,
And
so
this,
listen, we have a question here from a gentleman who asks about um, basically, does constructing where the thermals are, if you build buildings in those places, does that affect thermals? And is there a way to construct around an airport so that bird migration would avoid an airport?
you are, the question is
Albania.
if
That
we
was that
can,
was that was
if we
Yoni
can,
from Albania, by
we
the way.
can producing thermals. Johnny from
Johnny from Albania.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he's a good friend. We just met together in Elat. He
I,
came to the seminar of SPNI in Elat. You see,
I was
but the
wondering.
problem, Johnny in Albania. I hope to be there in the summer.
Of
Johnny is
course.
very keen. He's a bird. He's in Albania BirdLife organization like SPNI BirdLife in Israel, and they are building now. They are trying to build an airport, a civilian, in a very important area, which is a wetland with many birds nesting there, a few thousand flamingos and others. So hopefully, this is a Siemens Dutch company who got the contract, but they started to build. Even they didn't got all the permits, and they didn't make an environment. And I hope that Johnny will be leading, stopping this air base, the new one, in this wetland. and I'm coming there with
Wow.
some of our best colleagues from hopefully also from the United States and other countries to stop these airplanes. Okay.
Wow, that's impressive.
But the thermals are for the big birds. The thermals are the one who are attracting them. They know to find them. They know where to go there, and there they are. So we can map where they are flying.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it is 9 o'clock here in Israel. It's been a full hour. Thank you so much, Yossi, as usual, for this incredibly enlightening, fascinating, info-packed webinar. I think, I mean, just so impressive the work that you've been doing with the Air Force and even now the space program. I'm sure that when they have a bird migration site on the moon, you'll be involved. And it's really, really, really incredible. I don't know if you've been able to see the chats here, but everybody's thanking you so much and a million and kol hakavod. And I really think this was a great respite from everything else that's going on in the skies around us. It's great to talk about other things. And I like that poster we saw briefly on one of your slides, share the air. And
Take care. We share there. This is our
take
slogan.
care, we share the
Today.
air. Very, very, very nice slogan. Well, thank you very much, Yossi, and see you in daily work if we ever get back and you ever get back to the office. But it's been great having everybody here tonight. Thank you all so much for participating, watching us. I believe we're here. Um, I don't know, Nama, if you know the next webinar, but because we have Pesach coming up, and but I think by mid-late April we have another webinar coming up. We'll certainly be advertising it, so we'll be sending you emails. And guys, everybody, I appreciate so much everybody's feedback on this. Thank you so much. This will be online, recorded. It's been recorded. It'll be online on our site with all where all our webinars are. There's a link on all the announcements that we give you. So looking forward to next time, Yossi.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you, Nama, for giving me the chance and the stage to tell the story. Thank you very
Our
much.
pleasure. We'll get you on again to tell maybe the barn owl story next time.
Sure. I am now
Yeah.
full time with the Barnouts, of course.
Full time with the barn owls?
Yeah.
How many rodents are they eating a month these days?
Per year, 2,000 to 6,000. And
2,000 to 6,000 a year.
In June we are in Georgia. We have a conference now with 19 countries who joined our project with the Barnouts. But this is a
Incredible.
different story.
19 countries. That's another story we'll want to hear soon. And
Okay. Okay. After the
ne-
conference in Georgia. Okay.
oh, that's great. We'll enjoy the
Okay.
food.
Bye
Thanks
bye.
very much. Thanks, everybody. Lila Tov.